Check it out. It was a school bus full of emergency workers, police officers, firefighters, emergency workers. And they needed to come in and go to the bathroom and drink cold water and make phone calls. And they made the same kind of phone calls everybody else was making. I can't reach my husband. I've got to call my mother. She's got the kids. I've got to do this. I've got to do the next thing. It was extraordinary. They just spread out all over the first floor and the lower level where the administrative offices were. They went upstairs to the bathrooms. It was incredible, and what was really very special about it was the feeling that we were doing something for them. They came from getting the water. They were, somebody was standing with a watch at the door saying, "Where's so-and-so? We've got to get moving. We've got to get back into the bus." People dropping phones and running up and getting there. And, guys are coming out of the men's room saying, "Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am." So first I thought, well, I guess I'm 110. But then I thought, thank you. And I couldn't speak because I felt if I said anything, I was going to cry. I couldn't let any sound out. And I hope I looked as though I was grateful for what they were doing.
There were people that sat on the other side of the building that were sitting in their offices when the second plane hit the second tower. And at that point, they ran from that side of the building, no matter where everybody was. They all ran over to our side, almost like, I have to get away from this, and this is as far as I can go right now. And so we continued to just huddle together, really, on the safe side, what we thought was the safe side of the building. We walked down the stairs quietly. I remember silence, fear, just walking. We're on the 9th floor. We walked down the 9 flights. There was not panic. I guess we still really didn't know what was happening, but we all knew it was, whatever it was very bad.
I think it was when I was trying to call my husband again that an announcement came over the fire system, to notify us, evacuate the building. So I jumped on the first elevator that came with, I think, 3 other colleagues of mine. We got down to the lobby, out on Broadway. They all left. I mean, we all said goodbye, take care, and they left, and I stood there not knowing what to do. People were pouring up Broadway, tears streaming down their faces. It was like, I mean, I can't describe the looks on the faces of people who were coming from the south, moving north up Broadway towards me and past me.
I think I left the office about 10:30 when they evacuated the building. And when I left, I looked south down Broadway, and there was just a solid wall of white from this smoke and concrete powder that was blowing to the east. It was just a wall. You couldn't see anything in it. It wasn't foggy. It was solid white. There was just so much particulate in the air.
It wasn't even like smoke. It was this yellow, gaseous material that was right outside all of my. I have a lot of windows facing the river, and I couldn't see anything. It was almost like a terrible blizzard, but it was like a yellow blizzard. And it was almost like, I grew up in the 50s, it was almost like you saw things of nuclear explosions. That's what it looked like. And I think the other frightening thing is no one knew what to do. My neighbors were all coming in and going out and trying to figure out, should we leave, should we stay, and people were telling us different things. And then there were a number of people who had relatives who worked in the World Trade Center. Who didn't know what happened to them. And then they evacuated our office because our offices are right directly across from the Holland Tunnel. So that was very scary.
I ran into another coworker of mine who was just hysterical, and at this point I was hysterical, and we just sort of grabbed each other she was crying, saying that people had pushed her down, they were stepping on her. At the same time, this noise was getting louder and louder, and I remember there was a man standing there, and he said, "Oh, don't worry, it's our planes." Well, as it turned out, it wasn't the plane, it was the first building that was collapsing. And that ball of dust and debris just came over us. And so we got caught up in that, and I mean, within seconds, you know, we were covered head to toe in debris and dust and powder, and I couldn't see a thing. And I remember a woman came up next to me and said, "Miss, can I walk with you?" And I said yes, and the three of us were just sort of holding on to each other. We didn't know where to go or what to do, and we couldn't see anything. We turned a corner, and it just so happened that there was a delicatessen there that was open, thank God, and we made our way in there. And the owners were handing out water and letting people use their phone, which was, you know, I couldn't believe that we found that.
We kept the library open for a while because students were in there. The students came into the library as a safe place, for one thing. They felt comfortable, they felt safe. Also, we have the computer workstations, so they were able to get some information over the internet. We also have email workstations, and a lot of students wanted to contact their families and let them know that they were safe.
I did get hold of my sister who was watching the Today Show. She lives up in Ithaca, New York, and she said to me, "Are you all right?" I said, "Yes." She said, "Get out of there. This is not over." And she has very good instincts. I think we both do. Our parents were Holocaust survivors, and I think we were weaned to know danger and to get the hell out.
Finally, we decided the best thing to do would be just to go home, to walk over the Brooklyn Bridge, which was very close, a block and a half away. So John and I walked over the bridge together. Still pretty shocked, and looking back every once in a while at the flames and the smoke, feeling really vulnerable on the bridge, because if it was true that there were all these hijacked planes in the sky, this could be a perfect target. But I tried to keep myself from thinking that. When we were towards the Brooklyn side, pretty close to the Brooklyn side, a man coming from Brooklyn with a Walkman on said, "A plane hit the Pentagon." And people started saying to him, "Shut up, you know, stop saying that," because we thought it couldn't be true. We thought that he was lying, you know. And I remember saying to John, you know, what's happening is awful enough. That people are, you know, spreading these rumors is crazy. Then finally, when we got to the Brooklyn side, just as I started to go down the stairs, someone at the top of the stairs yelled, "It's coming down." And people ran back up to look, but I couldn't look. I mean, I just couldn't bring myself to see that.
I put a mask on, and my coworker Doreen put a mask on her face, and we just started walking, you know, just started walking, and we made our way past the hospital, and my coworker lives in Brooklyn, so I wanted her to come home with me, but she wanted to go home, so I think she ended up walking across the Brooklyn Bridge. And I just kept going. There was also another young girl with me who didn't want to be by herself, so she just was with me. We were walking together, but that was very surreal because it was just like this mass exodus of people, and it was dead silence. I mean, there was so much chaos, but yet it was silent. You know, and people were crying, and I mean, I was just in shock.
I was petrified, and I wanted to stay put. Because because by then they put the subways out, so there was no place to go. So my regional librarian had called, and he said just to stay there until further notice. So that's what we did. Well, there were just a lot of calls coming in. They were keeping me notified about what was happening, you know, which helped a great deal. But then we had turned on the radio, you know, and we heard that Mayor Giuliani said that the subways were back. I thought that they meant the subway outside. There are all subways at the New Amsterdam Library, but the one that was working was the F train. But all these people, the cops included, didn't know where the F train was. They couldn't tell us. So we're walking and walking, and we're exhausted by this time that we left the library. We finally ran into a cop that said that he would give us a lift because I was so tired and I had my cane with me. And he gave us a lift to the station. And then we got on the F train and you know, I headed home. I ended up about 7 o'clock I got home.
People kept coming up and into the building, and students who had family and students who knew people who worked there. So more people kept coming in the building, and then it just got, we ended up being sort of a sanctuary, which was a good thing, because we were trying to keep people calm. We canceled the classes. We had a kind of a quickie meeting in the hallway at one point, and it's kind of interesting because at the time we had no notion of how serious this was. We knew this was very, very bad, but we didn't have any idea about the ramifications. So we said, well, I guess we'll cancel classes for tomorrow, but we'll have classes on Thursday, you know, because we had to kind of think ahead. And that seems very naive in retrospect. Well, yeah, we'll be here on Thursday, we'll have classes.
I realized how much we really cared for each other. We held hands and hugged each other, comforted each other. People's reactions varied and changed by the minute. People were frantically trying to reach their families and their friends, and of course none of the cell phones were working. Some BlackBerry messages got through, thank goodness for those BlackBerries. And but there was a lot of panic in that people couldn't reach their families.
This is like World War II. This reminds me of the kinds of comings together that people have when they're separated from the people they love, when they're faced with danger and they're not sure what will happen to anybody next. And you reach out for comfort among the people who are near you. As we got the reports for the people killed in the Trade Center, and as we talked to people we knew whose friends or children or relations were affected by it, we realized that whole families in large communities in the metropolitan area had been broken. That in the same way the war, and certainly the attack on Pearl Harbor, had suddenly killed hundreds of young men and women, here were hundreds more young men and women killed, leaving families, young children, wives, pregnant wives. It was a decimation that was extraordinary.
It was I would say the first month or so was really difficult. I mean, there were several times where I just lost it at work. And we had grief counselors, and you know, I talked about it a lot. I talked about it with friends and family and people at work, and the more I talked about it, the better I felt. But there were still those days where, for absolutely no reason at all, I would just lose it.
You know, the stories that we heard afterwards, we had people who were stuck in the door where the first plane hit, right in the revolving door, and the person was